Because I was so paranoid of being dropped. And then all of a sudden the thing that happens that you're most afraid of happens and like nobody dies. And then you realize like you've been putting out into the universe this fear. They want you to be afraid because you rely on them. They're writing the checks and they're so powerful and you have a dream about getting a record deal and what it's going to be like. So at first I was really ashamed and I didn't want anybody to know.
Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. You are a person with hopes and dreams, and that was singer Morgan James on what happens when your worst fear is realized. Morgan has a soulful voice, big pipes, lots of power, a certain swagger, and incredible technique. But although she has a kind of classic sound, fed by the likes of Chaka Khan, Nina Simone, and Eva Cassidy, she has a modern career. She started out on Broadway. Well, actually, she started out singing opera at Juilliard. Well, actually, she started out as an overachieving high schooler in Modesto, California. Okay, if we're being completely honest, she started out in a kind of hippie family in Idaho. Anywhere, wherever she started out, she ended up in New York doing the hustle, putting in the time, and slowly pushing that rock up the hill. Eventually, as I mentioned, she ended up on Broadway, appearing in The Addams Family, Motown, Godspell, and Wonderland. So if you recognize her name, that might be why. But she also started to put together repertory shows as a solo act. One of her first major shows was a tribute to Nina Simone, which caught the attention of Doug Morris, the CEO of Sony Music, and that launched her on a journey that led her to a solo career as a soul and R&B singer today. Meanwhile, Morgan started making videos with Postmodern Jukebox, a collective project featuring classic-sounding versions of contemporary songs. As she tells it, more than Broadway, more than recording for Sony Music, it was this series of videos that she made with Postmodern Jukebox that grew her audience and set her up for the career she has today. I was surprised to hear her story, and I really got into it with her about the early part of her career, hanging with aspiring opera singers, going on Broadway auditions, doing the club dates. As a side note for all you loyal Third Story listeners, Morgan is married to Doug Womble, a past guest. The two of them write together, and Doug plays in Morgan's band, as well as handling the production of her recent records. When Doug was on the podcast a couple of years ago, we spoke quite a bit about his work with her, so when you're done with this one, you can go back and compare notes with the other episode on third-story.com. Morgan came by a couple weeks ago just before she left for a summer tour. We started the conversation by discussing how her band bumped mine from a gig in Washington, D.C. Folks, before we get started with the conversation, I need to let you know that I'll be taking a brief summer break from the podcast to focus on a new solo record of my own. I've got a number of great interviews set up for the next months, and I really look forward to sharing those with you when I come back later this summer. But for now, I invite you to enjoy this wonderful and compelling conversation with the lovely Morgan James. Here's a little taste of her cover of Prince's song Call My Name, a song that figures heavily in her story, as you'll see.
Heard your voice this morning, calling out my name. It had been so long since I heard it, and it didn't really sound quite the same. But it let me know that my name had never really been spoken before. Since the day you carried me across that bridal path door. And ever since that day I never wanted anyone but you. And anybody who really knows me knows the truth, that I just can't stop writing songs about you. I love you so much. I can't wait to get my arms around you and feel your touch. If I don't see you real soon, baby, I might go insane. I know it's only been 3 hours, but I love it when you call my name. I heard a voice on the news saying people wanna stop the war. If they had laughed as sweet as you, they'd forget what they were fighting for. What's the matter with the world today? Home of the free, somebody lied. They can bug my phone, come around my home. They'd only see you and me making love. I love you so much. I can't
Morgan James, I have to tell you that I'm a musician as well, and I work with my father, who you just met, who was sitting on the stoop. He's a musician as well. And we were booked to play in Washington, D.C. at the Hamilton Live on May 18th, and they called me and said, Morgan James wants to play at Hamilton on May 18th, now we are playing on May 24th.
I'm sorry.
This is a good sign. Everybody gets what they need. Do you feel that there is a buzz building right now around you? Do you get that kind of energy around you on this tour?
I definitely feel like it's a train now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think for a long time it was going so many different, it was on several different lines and kept getting stalled, and it wanted to go someplace, but now it feels like it has a destination. It feels like it's running itself a little bit more than it used to. Because it really used to feel like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who was going to help me get there, all these things. So buzz, I don't know about buzz because I am never satisfied, as most artists are not. But it does feel like, okay, if I show up someplace, a couple hundred people might show up. And I never think they will. I'm always so pleasantly surprised when they do.
Yeah.
That feels great.
From a long-term point of view, like the really long view, if you can show up in a major city and sell 250 tickets kind of forever, that's a great career.
Yeah.
Selling 1,500 tickets is great too, but like a consistent 250 for life will not let you down.
I remember vividly those shows where 7 people came, you know, and it's really good to remember that. And it always keeps you grateful that when 200 people show up, I really do feel like, golly. And this is kind of ostensibly the beginning of my touring career, because this is really the first time that I've had a true touring mechanism. So if this is the beginning, that's a good sign probably.
So let's talk about it. You, I think, are probably the funkiest thing to emerge out of Boise, Idaho that I am aware of. Right?
Yes, that I think is a fact.
You come from the deep of America.
Deep white.
The deep white.
I do, yeah. I was there until I was about 12. And we moved around a bit. We lived in Tennessee for a year and Utah for a year and then California for my high school years. So
why were you moving around so much?
Because my parents like to move around, and you know, they like variety and they're vagabonds, and they would just get an idea, oh, we'd like to go here. And you know, them moving to California was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because it was so close to San Francisco and Los Angeles and all these other places. We were very central, and it had great music programs and theater programs and teachers. And I don't know that I could have gotten the musical training in Idaho or any of the other places we had lived. So I think California was really clutch for me in discovering that I wanted to be a musician.
Do you feel like a California person, or do you feel like a great white person?
I definitely don't feel great white. I feel like a New Yorker now. I've been here longer than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even longer than I was in
California
or Idaho. You know, I've been here almost 19 years. So part of me feels like California because, you know, I came of age in California. So I learned to drive and would drive to San Francisco and became a hippie. And I lived out my scouring through vinyl stores dreams and, you know, wanting to be dressed like Annie Hall and be Joni Mitchell, you know. So that feels very California. But my roots, you know, the humility and the heart of me is kind of like from Idaho. When I go back there, it's so beautiful and so pristine.
Yeah.
And it really feels like I'm a kid again. So I'm really split.
What were you into as a kid?
Animals.
Huh.
Animals only. Animals and art. I was an artist, like painting, drawing. My grandfather was a painter, and so I thought I'd be a veterinarian. I just thought about animals, drew pictures of animals, painted scenes.
Yeah. And
then I discovered that I was really bad at math and science, and so those dreams came crashing down. And then someday, you know, one day somebody heard me sing, and I had this great big grown-up adult voice inside.
You have a big voice coming out of a small body.
Person. Yeah, I've been like that since I was, you know, 12. 12 is when I really started singing, you know, 13.
So somebody heard you sing casually, auditioning? What?
Yeah, my grandparents got me a karaoke machine, and so they heard me singing at Christmas, and it's like the rest is history.
And that's what came out of you. You got a karaoke machine, and you started singing along.
I sounded like a big, like an opera singer, like a big lady.
What were you singing?
I was singing like Phantom of the Opera or something that was popular at the time, or, you know, I loved musical theater. And
right, I think it's funny that you say Phantom or something that was popular at the time, because that was popular at the time for people who were interested in musical theater.
Yes.
But it wasn't necessarily pop music that you were listening to.
I would definitely recreate different albums in my karaoke machine. I thought I was really slick because I was like, I'll just keep putting the cassette back in and record my own harmonies. And I thought I was like the first person that had ever thought of doing this, you know, when I was 12. So I would recreate Joni Mitchell albums, and I'd bring out and do like songs to aging children and sing all the parts.
Mm-hmm.
And mom and dad would be like, oh, it's good, it needs work. You know, they were like so tough on me.
Were they musical?
No, they were actors. Like when they were in college and after, you know, they were actors, but nobody was really musical. I mean, my grandmother played the accordion, you know,
right.
Nobody else plays any instruments in my family.
So they had a sort of sense of what it was to be a performer, but not necessarily professionally.
They did regional work, and they had a theater company when I was a baby, but they had never come to New York or gone to LA, you know, and done that kind of rat race thing.
Yeah.
But they definitely knew what it was, the soul of an artist thing. They understand that. They would never discourage me from being an artist.
Right. Or be hung up on the, like, how
what are you
going to
do to make a living?
Yeah.
Yes. No, they've never really said that. There have been lean times when they said, is this still what you want?
Yeah.
But they understood that it was fully within the realm of possibility that I would make a living doing this.
In those lean times, did you ever ask yourself, is this still what I want?
All the time. At one point, I did kind of give up and say, I've got to do something different. And I went back and lived with my parents and like laid in a hammock for like 3 months and just stared up at the sky and said, what am I doing? Because I really wasn't getting anywhere.
Yeah.
At all.
A preliminary look at your trajectory shows that you arrive in New York, and I want you to tell me the story yourself. And then there's this kind of like 5-year window after college before you got a show and before you landed and really laid down professional roots in New York.
Yeah.
That sounds like the lean time.
Yes. And, you know, it's funny because I kind of count like the Juilliard years too, or like, because you're not anything yet, you know? And so that also feels like, what am I doing? And
so how did you know you wanted to go to Juilliard?
I don't know. I just decided I needed to be there. Audra McDonald had gone there. I wanted to be the next Barbara Cook. And in my mind, that was the path. And I probably could have gotten there a lot of other ways to get there, you know? For some reason, I just really thought I need to be somewhere so stringent and so strict and so, I don't know, tightly wound to match my personality. And so I really thought that I would thrive there. And I underestimated how difficult it would be. And I underestimated how little I would fit in. You know, none of these things, you can't anticipate these things when you're 18. You
right.
know?
So you're in California, you're doing musical theater, you're doing...
Yeah, I'm doing, you know, community theater and choir and, you know, speech and debate and trying to be a straight A student and try to get in all the other places in case I didn't get into Juilliard.
Which you didn't.
Which I didn't at first. Yeah, I got in everywhere and then I was waitlisted at Juilliard.
So you were tightly wound. You were like a model student.
Model student, model child and president of everything and, you know, student body, this and every club, every activity. The same way I am now. I mean, it's like I can't rest. People now say, oh, why don't you ever rest? I'm like, I don't know what that is. I've never done that.
Yeah.
I mean, my managers and agents and everyone throughout my kind of team, it is rare. I can probably name on one hand the times that they've had to ask me to do something twice because I'm just, you know, because I just really believe that in the no stone unturned and you have to do it right the first time you know, it's really a part of what has gotten me where I am, I suppose. And then I've just never been able to let that go, you know?
Yeah. But it seems like it's definitely work and work ethic that got you where you are, but also a lot of totally unexpected twists and turns. Yeah.
Yes.
So you were the perfect student applying to Juilliard and a bunch of other places.
Yes.
Where else where'd you get in?
UCLA Film School, which would have been a completely different path for life. And USC was going to let me do a double major. San Francisco Conservatory and a bunch of conservatories in California. And I didn't want to go to a musical theater program. For some reason, I thought that would be a really split kind of education. I thought it would be, I don't know. I didn't want that. I wanted a classical training. So what did you do? You protested? How did you get... Well, I got invited. You have to submit a pre-screening tape for the most popular divisions, which are piano, violin, voice. So I submitted a pre-screening tape, which I wish I had that tape because I bet it's hilarious. And then
you know what you sang?
I sang like the biggest arias of all time. I sang like Caro Nome, Juliet's Waltz. Just ridiculous.
But but confident.
Oh, I had no fear. I had no fear until I got to Juilliard. They beat that right out of you. And And they invited me to audition. So my dad and I flew across the country and we had a New York weekend. And then it was even worse because I got here and I, of course, like you do, you fall in love with New York City. And I thought to myself, I have to live here. So I auditioned and then I got a call back. I did some language and theory tests and ear training and things like that. I knew nothing about music at the time, really. And then I waited and I didn't hear back. And, then I get a letter saying, oh, she was great. She's on the wait list. She's like number 1 on the wait list. And I remember getting it going, oh, that's wrong. That's incorrect. I wasn't like, oh, that's too bad. I'll pick another school.
There's a mistake that's been made.
There's a mistake and I will not pick another school.
Well, also number 1 on the wait list. I mean, it'd be one thing if they said you're number 17 on the wait list. Yeah, but who's going to turn down Juilliard? You know what I mean? No one's going to go, oh, well, I'll just go somewhere else instead. Right, of course. But to know that you came that close, or at least that they're telling you that you're that close to it.
Yeah. There have been a lot of times in my life when I've thought, oh, that's incorrect.
Like what?
Like I sang for David Foster. I sang for every single major label, and all of them turned me down. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I was like, you're all wrong.
Yeah.
I think somewhere deep down, and it's not arrogance, it's about a deep, deep confidence in where you are, who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And you have to say, that's not right. Now, I didn't feel that way about the countless theater roles and Broadway shows that I didn't get because something about that, so many variables, it could have been any number of reasons why I didn't get a job. I never thought like that's wrong. But the Juilliard thing, and so I said to my parents, I said, something's wrong. I need to convince them that I need to be there. And they said, okay, yeah, do whatever you want. I mean, so I started writing them letters, sending them packets of crap, more letters of recommendation, more reviews, more photos, and just basically haranguing them. And then one day, my parents, who are both teachers, who never ever take time off, happened to call in sick one day together just to spend the day together. And they played hooky together. And they were having coffee and bopping around. And they got a call. And it was, what was her name? Anyway, it was the admissions advisor. And she said, we'd like to. And it was like the last day I had to tell every other school. And anyway, my parents came to school to find me. I remember like them poking their head in my Spanish class. And I knew from the face. And I was like bursting into tears. It was so dramatic. So dramatic. You
knew. You saw both. So you're in Spanish class, both of your parents' heads in the window.
And like they had flowers. And I was like, I'm going to Juilliard, man. I was like, I left and I was just screaming down the halls, I'm going to Juilliard. You know, it was really, really, and then, you think about those moments and the height of what you want and, before I knew anything about it, before there's disappointment and sadness and poverty and, et cetera, there's the moment that you get what you want. And there we have maybe we have a few moments in our life like that that feel completely unfettered.
Yes. And that was one.
Yeah.
So when you arrived, you say your confidence was kind of beaten back.
Oh, yeah. Because then I get there and I know nothing, which is true. And I have terrible technique.
You knew enough to come here, though. You knew that. You knew you should be here.
Oh, but I didn't know anything about music. I had bad technique. I knew nothing. I couldn't. It was terrible. So then they're like, oh, gosh. Basically, you'd start the uphill battle of learning all the languages. And then I discovered I'm terrible at languages. So then I'm in an opera program.
You were studying opera.
Oh, and it was, I was like, oh, gosh.
So Italian, German.
French. And then I realized, like, I don't like any of these people. Like, these aren't my people.
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing. Like, I don't fit in with opera singers at all. Never did, never will.
What are opera singers like?
Oh, boy. They're just different. Like, my dark sense of humor and my kind of, like... First of all, I was tinier than all of them. I was always more obsessed with the acting aspect, and they're not. So I said... who cares about technique if no one cares, and so acting was much more important to me than technique. And I was always making fun of everything. And I like satire and I like making fun of everything. I think that most things are ridiculous and opera singers are ridiculous and they take themselves very seriously.
Right.
They take it very seriously. I didn't take it seriously. I said, oh, I don't know about this,
Did you have a sense of what your voice would sound like in a contemporary pop or jazz or mainstream way, or you envisioned yourself as an opera singer?
Oh, this wasn't even on the table.
Right.
Making records, it wasn't even on the table.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I even knew was in my path whatsoever. It's not like, oh, after I'm done with this opera degree, I'll make a pop record. Like, no clue.
Right.
I wanted to be Barbara Cook. I wanted to do theater and crossover and opera and be a great actor who had a great voice.
Right. So many young singers today aspired to do what you do.
Yes.
And the way you got there was essentially in part by not aspiring to do that.
I never could have anticipated that this is where I would be. And, you know, I also, if I had been born with a Puccini voice, I would be singing Puccini everywhere.
Right.
Because that would be amazing. But I wasn't. I wasn't born with that voice. That's not the instrument I have.
But nobody had said to you along the way, up until that point, maybe this isn't the music you should be singing.
Opera?
Yeah.
I mean, at Juilliard, they kind of did. I mean, they were tough people. And they definitely saw that I was pulling in another direction all the time. And I think they probably thought, you are a tiny person with a tiny voice, all things considered.
Right.
The irony is, like, I always have the biggest voice in every room.
Yes.
But at Juilliard, I had the smallest, of course.
Right.
And I wasn't serious about the language, and I didn't care about the things they cared about. And so, you know, and my teacher at the time, my voice teacher at the time, was really, really tough. And it was kind of like, this probably isn't for you. And that's devastating, because then you're there and you're wasting your time and money and, you know.
So what happened?
So I was like hell-bent on finishing and graduating, which I did. And after...
So you were there for 4 years?
4 years. Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a not super fun 4 years.
No, it wasn't. Thankfully, I had my best friend from college, who's still my best friend. She and I got each other through it, and we were both singers. And no, not a social environment, not a comforting, warm, nurturing environment, not a very artistically fulfilling environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, let me just finish, and then I'll figure out what to do. My acting teacher at school, Ed Berkeley, amazing person, and taught at Circle in the Square. And also, he saw, okay, Morgan's never going to make it unless somebody carves a little hole for her somewhere. So he helped me find my first agent. He introduced me to some people that helped me just get started in musical theater.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew nothing. I left Juilliard. It's not like anyone had told me how to audition or built me a book of music. I knew nothing. I looked ridiculous. I had, you know, Crystal Gale hair. I was so sheltered, and I just didn't. That's why it took me so long to find my path in musical theater, because I was so this hybrid person.
Yeah. Well, you're still a hybrid person, really.
I am. Yeah.
But a little, I guess, more focused in what the edges are than you were then.
Well, now I can just, for many years I said, gosh, why did I waste my time? What am I ever going to do with this training? And now I use it every day.
You have all this technique that you can sort of unleash anywhere, right?
Yeah, all the time. I use it all the time. Every day. That's why I can do 28 shows straight, you know, it's technique. And so I'm so thankful for that. And I'm really thankful that I went there, and it furthered this Morgan work ethic that I always had. It really kind of kept sharpening it.
But you were focused on musical theater. That's what you sort of attacked when you graduated, was I'm going to try to get a musical theater gig.
And I thought it would be very easy. I thought, oh, well, I've got a degree from Juilliard, you know. I'll have no problem. I have an agent.
You have all the pieces in place, and so you start auditioning?
Oh, all the time.
What is that like?
Well, first you have to get your equity card, and then you have to...
How do you get your equity? What does that mean?
Oh, gosh. I did it the old-fashioned way, which I don't think anybody does anymore. But I worked at Summer Stock for $75 a week and 1 equity point per week. And I worked every summer at Summer Stock on dinner theaters, and then I was waiting tables, and I was tutoring, and I was nannying, and I was auditioning all the time. I was going to open calls. I was auditioning at least once a day, twice a day. And
what does that entail?
Like none.
What does that entail?
When you first start out and you're not going to appointments, when, you know, later in my career, when you're sent on appointments, it's much better and easier. But when you're going to open calls, you're sometimes going at 6 a.m. and standing in line and putting your name in. And
you're looking at all these people. You're standing in line surrounded by people who share the same dream.
Share the same dream, look like you, wearing the same crap, have the same book, sound like you. It's all a sea of just the people that look just like you.
Yeah.
You know? What's more special about any one person?
Yeah.
And thankfully, I would go on appointments that my agent would send, and you get a packet of stuff you have to learn.
Uh-huh.
Go in and sing. They look you up and down. They look at your, you know, and if you're not good at it, which I've never been good at it, and I'm still not good at it, if you're not good at representing yourself as singer-actor, you don't get the jobs. That's just the facts, you know? So, I've only gotten jobs based on people like me.
Right. I see. They,
you know what I mean?
Like you personally. They like your vibe.
Yes. I don't think I've ever gotten a job because I sang it the best. I think they're always glad they hired me.
Yeah.
I think I do the job really well. But getting the job, I've never been good at getting the job. That's why I hate it. Was part of the training at Juilliard learning how to memorize quickly and internalize? Because it sounds like if you're getting a book for each audition of all this material that you have to learn, that you have to be responsible for just absorbing a lot of material quickly. Well, I think if I had been in a musical theater program, they would have prepared me for that. But opera singers don't have to do that. They learn their roles that they're going to play, you know, and the audition process for an opera singer is completely different. They audition for a season, you know. They do years and years and years of young artist programs. Mm-hmm. you know your roles. These are my roles that I play.
Uh-huh.
So it's completely different, you know. And I also, looking down the barrel at that, I was like, okay, so I'll play these I'll play these 4 maid roles, and if I were an opera singer.
Right, for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And then maybe
I'm never going to graduate into being the countess. That's
Yeah.
just, I mean, look at me, you know. It's like no one's going to believe that
It's
I'm
a lot of lasagna. You'd have to start right now.
You know, I'm just not, that's just, you can't really buck the system in opera.
Yeah. Interesting. There's no workaround in opera.
I think there probably is now. I think if I made it to a higher place in my career or high profile, and then I said, yo, Metropolitan Opera, like, I'd love to come.
Right.
This is what I'd like to do, you know. And
But you're a name, enough of a
in
name.
an untraditional way.
Right. So you're out there auditioning. You eventually landed some gigs, but it took a while before you landed.
I would get
major.
regional here and
Yeah.
then 6 months of nothing. Regional here, 6 months of nothing.
What are you doing during those 6 months?
Waiting tables, nannying, tutoring, bartending, all the jobs.
What about your musical identity in life during that period? Did it start to shift at that point? Like when did you start to take on singing different kinds of music?
I think, you know, I started singing club dates, which are, you know, wedding bands. And I was actually really, really thankful for that because at least I was singing, but everybody wanted me to sound like I was in the white girl track. So here's this opera singer, and they're like, well, you need to sing things that were popular at the time. And so I kind of started doing just facsimile voices. Like
those bands always have like the white girl,
the black girl, the rapper, the this, you know. And you have to know all that music. So that I really started learning all that music.
Pop music. So do you remember what they had you singing?
Well, yeah, this will date exactly when it was. So it was Hips Don't Lie. It was, you know, some Madonna and Gwen Stefani and stuff like, you know, whatever was on the radio at the time.
Yep.
So then people go, oh, you have a good voice, but it was really a copycat voice.
Yeah.
It was really just, it wasn't my own. And then I started kind of singing a little more and thinking, oh, that might be fun to explore this part of it, but I didn't know how. And
so you think at that point, like the voice that we hear today, was that voice there when you were singing Gwen Stefani and Hips Don't Lie? Would we have, if I heard a tape of that, would I recognize that's Morgan James?
Kind of, maybe. I think you'd think, oh, that's kind of when she was like learning how to do it a little bit. Because I didn't even learn to belt until I was 25, you know, because I certainly hadn't done it when I was in school. Yeah. But I got out of school and started auditioning, and being a soprano was not popular. No one was getting those jobs because look at what was on Broadway. Wicked, you know.
Rent.
Yeah, nobody wanted a classical soprano. And so I thought to myself, you know, everybody said like she needs to cut her hair, lose weight, and learn to belt. And lo and behold, I did those 3 things and I started working. And it's sad to say, but, you know.
Huh.
And then the blonde, you know, woman that lost 20 pounds and learned to belt, suddenly she worked.
Were you not blonde before?
No, I mean, it was darker. I just looked more like my more natural self. You know, I didn't have any money for lessons at the time because I'd spent all my money on the best lessons on earth, you know?
Going to Juilliard.
Yeah. So I just watched tapes of Pavarotti and taught myself to belt.
You watched Pavarotti to learn how to belt?
He's the best belter.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard you say the name of one soul singer, pop singer, R&B singer, any type of artist that I guess listening to your records, I would assume you were going to school on.
That's who I went to school on for art, but not technique.
Yes.
You don't learn to sing listening to Chaka. You learn to be an artist listening to Chaka. You know, I really separate, you know, what to do with my instrument is different than what to do with my soul. Yeah, so Nina. Yeah, Nina was my church, you know, and Eva Cassidy. But
so when did that happen? After
it
you
was
do club
happening
dates?
all along.
It was
I
happening.
always listen. But yeah, through this period of time for sure. But I never thought I could be one of those people.
You didn't see yourself in that. That was something you liked, but it wasn't something that you identified with yourself.
Not really. You know, at one point, an ex-boyfriend, you know, was listening to Eva Cassidy and said, you know, there's something inside you. There's another voice inside you that I know it's in there that I hear that no one else hears.
Yeah.
And it's your Eva Cassidy. It's your Nina. And you're going to find it someday, you know. And he was absolutely right. And he would encourage me to write. And I didn't think I was a writer. But, you know, that is another level of, oh, how can I become some other person entirely? That sounds so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And what happens to all the technique and painting and stuff that I've done before? Do I throw it away or is it a part of this next person?
Yes. I think that that's the hardest thing, right? Especially when you kind of are reinventing yourself. How much of it do we reinvent? What do we keep? What's the essential part of all of us?
Yeah. I was working at a time at a restaurant called Prohibition that has live music every night. And I wanted to work there, not because I wanted to sing there, but because, I'll get to hear music every night. You know, so even though I can't afford to go hear music, I'll hear music.
Yeah.
You know? And there were some great bands there that taught me a lot. And Kim, the singer Kim that sang, several nights a week, and she used to sing with lots of people, Chaka and Mary J and all these people. And she would really, if I would ever get up to sing, she'd be like, don't do this, do this, learn these 10 albums, listen to this, don't do that, Do you
remember what she told you not to do?
She just told me she taught me a lot about showmanship, and it's very, it's very popular to make everything your own. But she would always sing things in this classic way. If she sang Sweet Thing, she would sing it in this classic way. And then I would get up and I would try to do some copycat version of like riffing all over something.
Yeah.
Or, white girl riffs. That's fun. And then, it's not years later you say, the melody is always the king,
Yeah. And actually maybe having come from that classical training also where like you have to just sing it the way it is, I can imagine that it would be so freeing and so exciting to start singing music where you get to just do your thing over it.
Oh yeah, and then everybody reacts.
Yes.
Everybody reacts when you do more notes. But ironically, you come back to when you're singing Baroque music.
Yeah.
Baroque music, you sing the melody. You prove that you can sing the melody perfectly. And then you add, then you add melismas, and then you embellish. Only after you've shown. So it's like melody is king.
Yes. Okay, so keep walking me through this. Then what happens?
So then I start to get do some workshops, and that was kind of my key into getting on Broadway was meeting composers and directors and having them write something new and put me in it. So that was really the key.
Not trying to audition for a role that existed already, but just get a role.
Get into new things. That's the key. So, and all four of my shows were things that I was a part of the workshop phase. That's really how you make it on Broadway, I think. I was in the first workshop of The Addams Family, and it was really, really magical and wonderful. And I hoped that I would continue with it, and I ended up. That was my Broadway debut.
So that's just kind of like putting in time, being on the scene, just paying your dues, being around, having the relationships.
You have to be in it to win it. Yeah. Just like, in jazz, like you just like have to be at those, what do you call them?
Sessions?
No, not sessions, but like you just have to be there waiting to get up and play with whomever. You just have to be on the scene. People have to say, I saw Morgan. She was here. She was there. She was there.
I think that that's the most overwhelming part of New York is that anything that you want, somebody else wants it too. A lot of people want it too.
A lot of people want it too. And, it was always really the jealousy and envy really would kind of eat me alive because somebody else is always getting your jobs. And why does this person have that? And I think that the thing I love most about what I do is a lot of other people that want record deals, that want to make albums, that want to tour. But I'm the only me, and I'm the only one making this exact music.
Yes.
And so it feels like a little slice of something singular.
Yes.
No one else can do exactly what I do. They're my words from my heart, and...
Right. And the same cannot be true of any Broadway role.
Well, yeah. No, I can't. There are a million people that could have filled my shoes. And
right.
Dozens of girls.
And some who have.
And some who have, and dozens of girls that could have done the jobs better and were jealous and envious of me, and dozens of girls that got the other jobs that I wanted.
What is that like when you get a gig and you are still thinking to yourself, even though the job is yours, could somebody else be doing this better?
Well, you kind of have to just, you'd go crazy if you thought about that too much, because it's just so arbitrary. When you find out how truly arbitrary and how much of being a good person and being somebody that people want to work with is actually more important than being the best. I kept fixating on like, but I'm great. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It actually doesn't matter.
So this is why you say you didn't feel the rejection so acutely when you didn't get roles, because you just understood that they're actually not evaluating me based on how well I sang or didn't sing. There's a whole collection of elements that go into this.
Yeah, you try to say that. Intellectually, you understand that.
Yeah.
It gets hard to just like not get 19 out of 20 roles, over and over and over. But one of my teachers, one of my coaches said, if I would do something great, I would sing. And he'd say, yeah, if they're susceptible to you, you'll get the job.
Yes.
If they're not susceptible to you, you'll never get the job.
Right. Doesn't matter what you say or do in the room. Doesn't matter what you do. So Addams Family was your first role. How long did you do it?
I did that show. I did the Out of Town and the Broadway run. So probably a year and a half all told.
And that's grueling. Then once you get a job like that, your life completely changes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the schedule? What is a Broadway schedule like?
Oh my gosh. Well, 8 shows a week. And then I was an understudy, so I was also rehearsing 2 days a week. So you have no life but that.
Yeah,
And
that's always my question. What happens during the day? Like, what is your life like?
It's very regimented. It's been a while, so I'm trying to remember. But yeah, you get up, you run a few errands. You sleep in because you're out late because it's a nightlife.
So you hang afterwards.
Yeah, you hang afterwards, and then you get home and you're hopped up and you're wired and you eat and you go to bed late. Then you get up, you do some errands. You probably go on more auditions because, of course, you want another job. Mm-hmm. You finally gotten the Broadway job, but now you want another Broadway job. Mm-hmm. So you're auditioning the whole time. And then you're going to understudy rehearsal, and then you go to your matinee, and it's just an endless cycle. And all the while, during Addams Family, I started my first band and started doing gigs.
Morgan James started a band. Folks, you don't have to run from job to job in order to listen to the Third Story podcast, and you don't have to start a band either. Just visit third-story.com to sign up, subscribe, send a message, leave a review, listen to other episodes, hook up with my social medias, and just get involved. Morgan James got involved. She decided to stick her neck out and put on a show of her own. Pretty soon she found herself in a series of ever more surreal meetings and showcases for the upper levels of the record industry, getting schooled in the art of the Hollywood slow no. Until one day, it wasn't no that they were saying.
Yeah, so I started my first band, and I got in my head, maybe I'd like to do a show. Like, I don't know. I didn't know whether it was a cabaret show or what it would be. But maybe I'd like to sing myself on a night off with a band, So I put it together, and
what material?
Oh, God, it's such a hodgepodge. I sang a bunch of songs I wanted to sing, all covers. And I had, full rhythm section and 3 horns, and had charts made and the whole thing. And it was, it was probably 2 hours of the most random potpourri of music. But even though it was weird and I didn't know what I was doing, there was something. Everybody came away from that night going, oh, you need to do that. You need to stand by yourself with the band and sing. That's what you're supposed to do. Felt like that's what I'm supposed to do. I felt that feeling of the karaoke machine day where, I sing and everyone stops and looks and says, that's different. That's something special. Mm-hmm. And I never felt that singing opera. I didn't even really feel that singing musical theater. It's not like anybody ever stopped and said, she's special.
Yeah.
Everybody said she's tenacious, she's good.
Yeah.
So then I kind of got on that path, and I started to put together better charts and better shows and better bands and switch people around and figure out how to lead a band and figure out how to, arrange and do all these things. And I would do a show on my days off quite often.
Where were you playing?
Rockwood, Le Poisson Rouge, Bitter End, any place, and nobody would show up, but it kind of didn't matter, and it was probably for the best.
Yes.
And then people would hear me, and then labels started coming around and inviting me to come in, and then it got planted in my mind, I want to get a record deal. That'll be the magic bullet,
Your first label album was actually like a live repertory record.
Well, yeah, it was a Nina Simone tribute, and it was never meant to be a record.
It was like a live concert.
It was a concert that Doug Morris went to and said, I want to listen to that again. And 15 minutes later, he had everything in place for it to be an album. And a week later, we recorded it. So it was so...
Recorded it live, though, right?
Yeah. At the next set.
I see. Had you been doing label showcases at that point with that material? Or trying to attract a label with that
not with that material. I was doing shows and I was singing for people dependent. I went to David Foster's house. He had me come out to his house in Malibu, and
how did you
Paul
get there?
Anka was there recording his Christmas album.
How did you get there?
I was in LA I went to LA because David Foster wanted me to come take a meeting. You fly to LA and you go to David Foster's
What did he
house.
hear?
He had heard me, he likes a crossover artist.
Yes, I know.
So I was a little afraid he would want me to be a crossover, but I really wanted a record deal. And he was just about to take over Verve.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering when this was.
Yes. And I went to his house. Barbra Streisand's lawyer was there. Paul Anka was there. He had me sing for an hour. He sat at the piano and he would just call out songs. He had me sing every genre of music. And we were just shooting the shit. And he kept getting, what kind of album do you want to make? We're going to make the best album. I thought it was in the bag. And he turns to everyone in the room and says, what do you think? Oh, you got to sign her. Oh, what do you think? Best voice I've ever heard. Oh, what do you think? I mean, they were laying it on thick. Never heard from him again. You know, I mean, I had meetings like this that were so magical. So it's really after that many, I mean, I had Clive Davis and, you know, you name it. Simon Cowell, all these people saying,
Wow.
best voice I've heard in generations, da 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 da, right? And then you hear nothing. Nobody signed me. Nobody, you know, went in to sing for Universal. Everybody.
That's incredible to be in the room with David Foster and we're going to make, what do you all think? It's actually, to be honest with you, extremely manipulative thing to do.
Yeah, I know.
To do that and have all these people, Paul Anka in the room. What do you think, Paul? Should we sign her?
Oh, yeah, best thing I've heard all, you know. And, you know, I would go into all these meetings and in fact, I had a meeting at Epic.
Uh-huh.
And he said, well, you know, there's no place for you at Epic, but I'll try to find a place for you, some other label. And I said, okay. And then, you know, years later ended up being there. It was just funny.
You made 2 records on Sony, right? On Epic.
Yeah.
As the labels have become more and more consolidated, it's very hard to know where you really are and what that means.
Yes.
And you fall under that umbrella of an artist who is not easily categorized.
Yeah.
And could play to a number of different markets. When I talked to Doug the other day, he was telling me that on your first studio album, maybe they took it to the wrong kind of radio. If it had gone to a different kind of radio format, it would have connected more quickly and more immediately. It's so out of your hands.
But that's just what they choose to do. This is why being at a major label is so frustrating, because you really are at the mercy of what they want to do that day.
Yeah.
There is nothing holding them to any of the marketing promises, the artistic promises, developmental, or anything.
Right.
So they can do whatever they want to that day. And in the times that they put their money where their mouth was, it went so far. Like when they took my song to Urban Radio, it did so well.
What song did they take?
Call My Name. And it did really well at Urban Radio, and it did really well in that format and different places like that. And then they decide that they don't want to spend money on you anymore. That's it. There is no going back and saying, wait, I need you said you were going to do these things. Because they'll show you a piece of paper that says, oh, we spent all this money and this is what we did. And it's just, you're not connecting with people. No, the songs that connect with people are the songs they hear.
Yeah.
If people can't hear you, they can't connect with you. They're not going to find you in a vacuum. It is still a pay-to-play world, and I don't think that the average listener understands that. If Epic or Sony had wanted to make me a star on my first studio record, they absolutely could have. And they could have put the money, but it's a question of choice. And you know what? And LA decided he didn't want to do that, so he didn't.
So what happened? So
yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I love this stuff, and I think this is really great because I've known Doug Womble for a while, and I know that he worked with you on the production.
Yeah,
he's also your husband.
Yes, he's my husband.
I spoke to him for this podcast right after that record had come out, and we talked about the production and, you know, in his own trajectory, how it was also a very unlikely sort of outcome if you had looked at where he started out 15 years earlier.
It's true.
And in some ways, I think that's, for both of you, that project was kind of like two people coming together to find something that they really are good at and meant to do, and probably didn't expect that was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did. We really fell in love and started writing songs together, and that was, the rest is history.
Yes. But I also started seeing you on these postmodern jukebox videos.
Yeah.
Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, the record was already out, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall that they were not doing anything. And they just kept moving money around and telling me they were doing things and then not doing them. And I was starting to get really paranoid that they were just burying me. And I was very paranoid they were going to drop me any minute.
And how long did it take to make the record? Like writing it from, like you'd probably put like a year into it.
We put a year into writing it and doing everything because they kind of wouldn't give me they weren't doing anything to develop me, so I was just doing tons of shows and playing music live and finding out what worked.
So you were signed, but you had to put the material together, put the album together.
Yeah, and then
they signed you and let you write. They said, we're going to sign you, and you find the material.
I didn't have a single song written when I got signed. I got an old school record deal with just like, oh, she's a great singer, let's just give her a record deal.
But who developed it? Who was developing it?
Nobody.
Did they give you a producer?
No.
So you found Doug.
Well, Doug and I were just writing together. Yeah. Like, it's not like I ever said Doug's going to produce my record. They never connected me with anybody. Not a single writer, not a single song, not a single producer. I had a different about every 3 or 4 months, my A&R would get fired. I would get assigned a new A&R. He or she would usually 20 years old, wouldn't know anything about me or any of my influences. Then months would go by in that circle, and then they'd always say, "Oh yeah, we need to find you songs," and I was like, okay, I started just going, okay, I started to be very skeptical. And I said, okay, I'm just going to have to make this myself.
Yeah. So what do you wake up in the morning and like, you're like, I'm signed to Sony.
But I was still in a Broadway show at the time. I still had a full-time job. So I was doing 8 shows a week.
Right.
And then writing all day, doing solo shows on my day off. And I would invite the people from the label who come to my shows, and Doug Morris liked a couple songs, and he came to a show and he said, I like this song and that song. Why don't you do a couple demos and see how they turn out? So he said to LA, give her some time and money to do demos.
To LA Reid.
Yes. Who was the head of my label at the time.
Is no longer.
Is no longer, yes. So we went into the studio with the band and recorded 7 songs and played them for them. They would always go, oh, wow, we really like this or that. And then nothing would happen. The red tape and the amount of laziness / nothing getting done unless you're a hip hop artist or, I just basically pushed and pushed to get it done. And I kept on everybody. And
so you kind of feel like if you hadn't been proactive, the record just wouldn't have gotten made.
Oh, no way. There's absolutely no way.
Did they give you an advance when they signed you?
Yeah.
But they still weren't motivated.
My 3rd record too.
Huh.
The week I got dropped, they called my lawyer and optioned my 3rd record. And this is how on a dime LA Reid is. He called me. He wanted Babyface to produce my next record.
Yeah.
He wanted it to be an old school, big old fat record, huge marketing plan. He really wanted to do right by me because he didn't do right by me on the first one. I said, great. Calls my lawyer, options the record, leaves him a message. That day at a staff meeting, he says, oh, I have a new idea. Every month till the end of the year, we're going to drop 4 artists and sign 3. Who didn't make money this month? And that's how I got dropped.
Huh.
Who didn't make money this month? Yeah.
This month.
That's it. Done. I was gone. Nobody to this day has called me from Epic Records to tell me that I was
So
dropped.
what your lawyer told you?
No, they had an intern call my manager. Someone who's undoubtedly fired now,
Okay, so, you give me this kind of knowing smile when you say that. But what did that feel like?
It felt horrible because I felt ashamed and I felt rejected and I started to cry and my manager said, why are you crying? And I said, because I feel ashamed and I feel rejected. And he said, this happens to everybody.
Yeah.
This has happened to the best. It's a badge of honor in the music business or rite of passage or whatever. Right. And I said, yeah, the way he told me, he said, I got good news and bad news. He said, you're going to make whatever kind of record you want to make and it's not going to be on Epic.
Yeah.
And I was like, they dropped me, because I was so paranoid of being dropped. And then all of a sudden the thing that happens that you're most afraid of happens and like nobody dies. And then you realize like you've been putting out into the universe this fear. They want you to be afraid. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you rely on them. They're writing the checks and they're so powerful and you have a dream about getting a record deal and what it's going to be like. So at first I was really ashamed and I didn't want anybody to know.
Because there are so many independent artists out there and there are so few that are signed to labels. And to get to be one, it's like I'm sure that it must feel just great just to say I have been chosen and anointed as one of the few left. And
also to most average people that don't know anything about music, oh, well, she's a real, they don't know.
Yeah.
They think you're with a major label, you're a successful person. Yes. They don't know what it's like to be there.
Right. And everything you describe about the frustrations that you felt, there are workarounds. There are ways as an independent artist to be, what you don't necessarily have is access to that deep pool of resources when you need it. But if you're talking about, I want to take it to this kind of radio and I want to do it right now because I realize that it's going to connect or I need to be in front of this kind of audience or I need to be making this kind of music, you can do that much more easily as an independent artist.
It's true. And you can connect directly to the people that are buying music and buying tickets.
So it's hard to take a song to radio, but I mean, you are very active on social media. You're very connected. Yeah. You have also had this sideline, and this is why I brought up the postmodern jukebox thing, because that's an example of doing something that 10 years ago or 20 years ago wouldn't have even been a thing.
Yeah.
And now it's a way to get in front of all these people.
Well, it's really how I grew my fan base because Epic wasn't helping me. They weren't doing anything to help me grow my fan base.
Right.
And all of a sudden I had a viral video for all intents and purposes. Yeah. And all of a sudden my numbers just started going and people said, oh, who's that? Who's that? And started passing it around.
So what was the first one that you did?
Maps was the first one. And then I ended up doing 10 videos with them and 3 tours.
Right, I heard that. You went to Europe with them?
I went to Europe with them. I did like 6 weeks in Europe, 3 weeks in America, and 2 weeks in Australia.
How did the whole thing work? How did they approach you?
We have the same agent, and our managers are buddies. And I saw some of it and I said, I don't know if that's really for me. But Scott, who runs the joint, said, well, we can do whatever's right for you.
Yeah.
We can make an arrangement that really fits you. I want it to fit you. And he does that. He really wants it to benefit the artist.
Right. So did you choose material? Did he choose material?
I said, he goes, I never really like anything that's on the radio, but he said, he let me arrange that tune. And most of the tunes we did together, he let me have a heavy hand in. And, and then a lot of people, to this day, that's the gateway drug, and they find me.
I miss the taste of a sweet life. I miss the conversation. I'm searching for a song tonight. I'm changing all of the stations. I like to think that we had it all. We drew a map to a better place, but on that road we had a fall. Oh baby, why did you go away? I was there for you in your darkest times. I was there for you in your darkest nights. But I wonder, where were you when I was at my worst, down on my knees? And you said you had my back, and I wonder, where were you when all the roads you took led back to me? Now I'm following a map that leads to you. That map that
That's Morgan James with Postmodern Jukebox doing the Maroon 5 song Maps. Speaking of maps, Morgan has done a series of tributes to important albums on YouTube, and those videos also help to put Morgan on the map. One in particular was her tribute to D'Angelo's Black Messiah, which she did as a live duet with Doug Womble. Let's get a little taste of that, and then return to the final segment of our conversation, the gooey center of this molten chocolate cake of a conversation with Morgan James.
Take a toke or smoke with me as you dream inside. Let your days slip away. Come with me and ride. My darling, you ain't the average kind. You need the comfort of my love to bring out the best in you. I hope that you do see what you're giving to me. Separating, debating, stay with me, that's all you gotta do. You can't leave me, it ain't that easy to walk away when I want you to stay, baby. You can't leave me, it ain't that easy. Ow, ow, ow. Ever hit with a choice that you can't decide? Which direction, left or right? Shut your mouth off and focus on what you feel inside. See, no, I'm gonna be my vibe. You won't believe all the things you have to sacrifice just to get peace of mind. And you take what they give as if it did suffice. Still, it's just a waste of time. Oh, I'll offer you the truth. You need the comfort of my love.
Yeah, we did the entire album of Black Messiah. And in fact, some people come to my shows and said, oh, I heard Chris Rock and Q-Tip talk about you, because on Q-Tip's podcast, Chris Rock said, oh, did you hear that some white girl did the whole Black Messiah? And like, he never says my name, but people go, then they Google, white girl does Black Messiah. Right. They find me, you know? Some people find me through Call My Name, the Prince tune. Some people found me through Postmodern Jukebox. Some people find me through, you know, the Broadway world. You know, it doesn't matter how somebody finds me. And at the merch table, I always say, how'd you find me?
And you get a different answer.
Different answer every time.
Right. Well, that's, I think, where we sort of land in your career right now, which is there would have been no way strategically to say, I'm going to do Broadway, and that's going to lead me to a solo career as a singer-songwriter.
No, there's no way.
Or I'm going to do the postmodern jukebox, and that's going to lead me to direct connection with my fans. Or I'm going to like do all of Black Messiah, which is a pretty bold thing to do.
Yeah. And I got a lot of negative feedback.
Really?
And oh yeah. The cultural appropriation, factions hated me for it. And anybody who really knows me or anybody who listened to it would know that there's nothing about it that's cultural appropriation. You know, it's it came straight out of love and wanting to deep dive on a really, really great record.
Subsequently, you've done a couple of others, right?
I did all of Continuum, John Mayer.
Fantastic
I
record.
did all of Blue, and we did that in one long take as one performance with piano for the 45th anniversary of Blue. Yeah.
And are we talking about this other one that brings you to my house today or not?
So we just recorded the entire album of Jeff Buckley's Grace for the 20th anniversary of his death. And we're editing it right now. And he died May 29th.
Uh-huh.
And which I can't believe it's been 20 years since
extremely
he's been gone.
Mysterious circumstances.
Yeah.
Were you a Jeff Buckley fan?
Yeah. I mean, I found him later. I probably found him in my 20s, but
I think he probably ticks a lot of boxes for you, right? Because, I mean, he had that incredible technique.
Incredible technique. He loves Nina Simone.
Yeah.
He loves art songs. He's such a weirdo. You know, he has this crazy instrument that does all these things.
Yeah.
He also is really hard to be put in a category. Yes. So, yeah, I really identify with him.
What drew you to Nina Simone, and how have you thought about that when you sing her?
I always thought we were I felt this connection to Nina, she was a classical pianist. She wanted to be the first Black female classical pianist.
Yes.
You know, she went to Juilliard, and she didn't belong in any of the genres, and she found popular music accidentally.
Like you.
Yeah. So I felt really connected to her, and I felt like one day she showed up to play piano, and they said, the gig is for a singer, and so she became a singer.
I mean, the one thing is, I don't hear you feeling like a failed opera singer. I think that you, at a certain point, I mean, I guess to a certain degree, it didn't really work, but you very quickly realized that there was another place for you. Nina Simone, it seemed like for her whole life, actually carried around the pain of not having been a successful opera singer.
Yeah, I think it was, she carried
pianist.
around pain. I think that she carried around a lot of pain. And, in that way, Joni Mitchell, considers herself a painter first. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something very interesting to me about that something not working leads you to who you really are, And sometimes we don't know what's best for ourselves.
We can't see ourselves.
Yes. Kids, younger people, come up to me all the time and say, tell me how to do it. What's the path? How do I do it? Tell me. And I really... How do you say there is no way?
Yeah.
Not only is there not one way, there is no path.
Yes.
No one could have ever said to me that this is the path.
Yeah.
No one could have told me how to go down this path.
It's like a good opportunity when that happens to check in with yourself, because I'm sure that you must be thinking, how do I get to the next place in my career? How do I get to and when you're there, how do I get to the next place?
Yes,
how do I get this record
insane.
To be heard by the right people? And how do I, if I'm playing for 250 people, how do I play for 500? And how do I make money? Right. And but you're still at a place, very much at a place, where people are coming to you saying, teach me, tell me.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does that girl at Juilliard, looking at your career today, what would she think about all of this?
It's funny. I mean, I really used to say, you can probably find interviews of me in high school saying, well, I want to move to New York, and if I can just make a living making music or making art, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And I am doing it. So that younger girl would say, you're doing exactly what you said you would do.
Right.
You have accomplished everything you said you would accomplish.
Yeah.
But we always want more things.
Right.
We want bigger and better things, and we want more, and that's what keeps me going. I think the day that I just say, oh, I'm fine, I'm satisfied, I think I'll just die. I don't know.
Well, I hope that even if you are satisfied one day, it doesn't kill you. But
right.
How did you approach, once your manager said to you, good news and bad news, you get to make the record you want to make? What was different about making the record you, quote unquote, wanted to make?
Well, he said, you need to write as many songs as you can.
Yeah.
So would you be open to just co-writing with as many people as possible?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. So you set me up on as many co-writes as you can get.
Yeah.
I don't care who it's with, I'll go.
Yeah.
And I never said no to a single co-write. And I went out on dozens and dozens.
Yeah. How do you like those?
I think they're really fun. I think that, sometimes they're really easy, and Sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
They're blind dates, you
Yeah.
know? And then you meet somebody and like, oh, I want to date that person again. And,
Totally.
And I came up with like a lot of new songs. Of course, I had written a whole other album that L.A. Reid wanted me to write, and we scrapped it.
So let's talk. Let's briefly dig into this because you've alluded to a little bit, and I know that one of the things that happens in labels is that you kind of have to have an advocate, or sometimes it's been called a rabbi. You have to have somebody who's in there who's like, you got your back. And it sounds like L.A. was supposed to be your guy at the label.
Well, my guy was Doug Morris, head of Sony. My guy was really Barry Gordy. So I got my record
so you
deal.
got Doug Morris, Barry Gordy, and L.A. Reid.
Mm-hmm. And Clive is a huge fan, you know. But I had the trinity,
Yeah.
you know, of Barry Gordy, Doug Morris, and L.A. Reid. So ostensibly, I should have been a big success, you
Yes.
know. But the problem is, if you don't have soldiers on the ground, I think more important than the rabbi, than the head, than the figurehead, than anything, are soldiers, and I never had that. Nobody that was doing the work cared. So it doesn't matter if the president of the company says, do this work.
Yeah.
If you're like, I don't care about this music. It's if an A&R finds you and you're their baby,
Yeah.
your record will get made.
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
was handed down to LA, and basically Doug said, we're signing her. She's yours now. And LA was like, okay. And then he said, oh, she's got a great voice. I mean, LA would always say, you're the best voice we've had in generations. But it's not like, I still didn't have any. LA doesn't make the records. LA doesn't do the work. He's
Yes.
the head. So I still never had any soldiers. And that was ultimately the problem.
How was the experience of making the record yourself then? This new record, was it basically a pledge record originally, right?
I did a pledge campaign when the record was done to get some marketing, which was very successful. And again, a testament to my fans and a testament to my, you know, the people that show up.
Yes.
But we made this record. It was so amazing because I would say to the small little handful of,
Yep.
you know, the committee, my agents and managers, I would say, well, I want to do this. And they'd say, great.
Do it.
And I'd say, well, what do you think about this t-shirt design? What do you think about this cover? They'd say, great. Well, what do you think about this? Yeah. Are you happy? Is this your vision?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you can get behind it and say, everybody come out? And great, then do it.
You know, you're a kind of artist who takes a lot of ownership of your career and also an enormous work ethic, having done Broadway and all that stuff. There are still those crazy artists out there who just don't know how to deal with like getting up in the morning. You know what I mean?
I
mean, I have
know a lot of them.
So there are plenty of artists who maybe aren't meant to survive in this model, in this new way. I just wonder if we're missing out on great talent sometimes because there are people that just don't know how to do this or can't do it.
I'm sure we are. It's a war of attrition, you know, and it's like sometimes when people say, oh, how did you make it? I said, because I'm still here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I'm better than anybody else. I just haven't given up.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand why people give up.
Yes.
I definitely understand why people leave New York.
Yeah.
I understand why they just can't take it. And this kills their artist soul, and they cannot do it anymore. I totally get it. It totally destroys you. And I love being destroyed by this town.
Yes.
I don't want to be happy and complacent in any other town. I'd rather be destroyed in New York any day, you know, and be made to feel completely useless.
So you made the record sort of independently. You felt, but it sounds like in many ways your Sony record also got made because of you, not because of Sony.
I forced that to get made, yeah. And when they pulled it, when we got so basically we released the record and then we didn't get the Prince approval to release Call My Name on it.
Yeah, I heard about that. That doesn't make sense to me.
They wouldn't let me put it on.
I don't get that. I had heard about this. So you did a Prince cover. It's one of the songs that you're most associated with.
Yes.
And Prince was alive. So Prince denied you the right
nobody
to know.
denied. Nobody asked him. Nobody even petitioned for it.
Right.
They didn't want to deal with the legal. So they didn't want to ask him. So we released the record.
Yeah.
And then
Without that song.
And then I got transferred to the urban department at Epic. I played it for them again. And they were like, we need to release this immediately.
Yeah.
And LA was like, yeah, I know. We can't. I was like, why don't you call him? He's like,
Did you change a lyric or anything in the song?
No. I mean, I changed a couple pronouns, but I knew I have been saying from the beginning, I said, if Prince hears it, he'll like it.
Yeah.
Like, give me that. Try it.
Yeah.
So LA had the power from the beginning to call Prince.
I'm not totally clear that anybody needs the power to call Prince. I mean, it sounds like it's more based on relationship. Prince.
Well, he pulls stuff all the time.
I don't
he does have
I
the
don't
power.
see how he does that.
But he does. So if you look and try to find a bunch of, prior to his death, if you looked for a bunch of covers of his songs on YouTube, you would not find them.
On YouTube, I can see that. But so it was eventually released, though.
Well, then one day he calls me and he's like, you know what? I was just playing my music on shuffle and Call My Name came up and it's amazing. And I said, thanks.
Yeah.
He's like, we should totally call Prince.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. Years in the making now.
Right.
So he calls his assistant and says, would you listen to this song? And 5 minutes later, Prince called him back himself and said, I love it.
Yeah.
And we basically went into motion immediately. So they pulled the record. And when they pulled the record, Hunter, in order to add Call My Name, quote unquote, I was convinced they were just going to shelve me. And
They pulled it. Had it been manufactured already?
Yes. In fact, you can't find that original record. They pulled it and destroyed it.
Uh-huh.
Pulled it, redid the art.
Added the new song.
And a couple other new songs. And re-released it. And they did re-release it. They spent a whole nother money, all this money on rollout again.
Right.
And went to Urban Radio.
With that song.
With a very racially ambiguous cover photo for that. For Call My Name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you felt that they were kind of saying, "There's no blonde girl here. This is we're not saying."
Yeah, I mean, at that time there were two white people on Urban Radio. You know, it's not a ton of white people on Urban Radio.
Yeah.
I mean, which I was incredibly proud of.
I mean, but again, it's so interesting that like your whole trajectory does not express that necessarily, that you would be and end up as one of the few white people on Urban Radio. You know what I mean? You were singing opera at Juilliard. It's just unexpected.
It totally is.
So what do you want now?
I want to keep making albums. You know, I want to keep making records, and I want to keep touring. Touring is what I love, because I'm not an artist that you hear on the radio. It's not 1992. You're not going to hear me on the radio and then find my show and go see me live.
Yeah.
You're going to see me live and then buy the record.
Yes.
So it's imperative that I sing live.
Yes.
It's imperative that I do the best live show, and I have to have people walk away saying, oh, I've never heard anybody sing live like that.
Yeah.
I want that. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
Because they may not find me another way.
Do you find you have such a big voice? Do you find that it's hard to contain on recording? That it's
really hard to record.
I can imagine.
I think I'm much better live than recording.
Yeah.
It's been hard to find the right mics.
Yep.
It's been hard to mix. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. I can see how you must really get over live, because it's just so in front of you. It's so undeniable, and it's so present. Things read small on records a lot of times. Things that are small sound big, and so things that are big, it's hard to know, do they sound bigger or do they sometimes kind of sound smaller?
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
And some of the most popular records of the last 10 years or so, they're really small voices that are made to sound big and full by virtue of the way they're recorded. So if you have a big sound, it's hard to capture the visceral experience of that.
In fact, even if you look at artists that you guys did those covers on, like John Mayer, I think he probably sings very soft. I get the sense that he sings soft.
Yeah.
D'Angelo, I'm not even sure.
D'Angelo kind of like, he can do everything,
Yeah.
but he kind of sings like very little. It's all vibe,
Yeah.
you know? And that's the cool part about it. That's the great part about those records.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your journey so far with me.
Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Anything else you want to talk about?
We deep dove on the trajectory.
That's the point. That's what I'm into. That's what I like to do.
How people get where they are. I'm always fascinated how somebody gets to where they are.
It's all I want to know. And so I do a lot of co-writing also, and I do a lot of production. I remember I was doing co-write with somebody who said, we've been talking for 2 hours and we've got like a verse written. Yeah. Because I go there with people. I want to.
You have to find so much out before you can. That's what I always find so weird about co-writes, is that I say on stage as a blind date. So you go, oh, okay, I'm Morgan.
Yeah.
I like, this is what I like. And,
right.
And then you really have to get to know someone. You have to spend the first few hours chatting.
I wrote with this guy, Mark Copley. Do you know him? He's a guitar player.
I know Mark, yeah.
We
played together on Broadway.
He was around forever. Now I think he's still in Nashville. Yeah. And before he moved to Nashville, he had been going down to do some co-writes. We were connected through his publisher, and he's like, you go to Nashville and you write, like, the song's written and you don't even know the person's name, I
did 12 sessions in Nashville.
You did 12 sessions in Nashville.
And 12 songs got written. And, one of those made it on the record, but a lot of those sessions were just like...
So you know what? If 1 out of 12 sessions turned into a cut, I think that the entire Nashville mentality would say, yes, that's exactly write right. 2 a day. And if you get 1 out of every 20 that you write on a record, then so that's every 2 weeks you're getting something on a record. Absolutely. And meanwhile, like Mark and I, like we had to, we scheduled a second session to write the bridge. Like we were just taking our time talking, he had an incredible backstory also. And like, I just was like, I just want to know people. And then yes, at a certain point, once you get to know somebody, you start to say, okay, what's going on? Let's write something. Like, let's write something real, or like, let's connect here. I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, I think the whole Nashville mentality would say, it doesn't matter.
They definitely would. It's a machine.
It is
well, and
cool.
in LA, I did several sessions in LA,
Yeah.
and some of them really got on my nerves because I would say, well, I don't care about that, and I don't want to write about that, and I don't want to do a song like that.
Yeah.
Or that lyric is stupid.
Yeah.
And they'd say, it doesn't matter. It's that's
pop.
going to be a hit.
Yeah,
And
but-
I'm like, we're never going to be a match.
I think in LA, producer is king. I think in Nashville, songwriter is king. And I
Yes.
think in New York, we don't really know. I mean, I find New York to be musician is king in a lot of ways. Or,
Yeah.
you know, that
Definitely.
Morgan James, thank you.
Thank you so much.
There it was, the great and unpredictable path of Morgan James. Say, if you like this one, you might also like previous conversations with Doug Womble, Andre DeShields, or Michael Thurber. I'll be back after my summer break with a new collection of great conversations and a brand spanking new solo record. Until then,
But it's over.
I'll talk to you soon.
Just hear this and then I'll go. You gave me more to live for, more than you'll ever know. This is our last embrace. Must I dream and always see your face? Why can't we overcome this wall? Baby, maybe it's just because I didn't know you at all. Kiss me, please kiss me, but kiss me out of desire, baby, not consolation. Oh, you know it makes me so angry, 'cause I know that in time I'll only make you cry. This is our last goodbye.